So, throughout the last days, I've had another incredibly disappointing social contact. Someone from open climbing group whom I met up with once, and whom with things escalated directly after that. The thing is, it always is the same pattern. Essentially, the other person, is, especially when it's a man, usually is inherently psychotic with regard to me. So if the other person always perceives me as a lesser person than I actually am. The other person constantly assumes that I would be less intelligent than I am, that I would be less wise, less emotionally mature, less knowledgeable, and less skilled than I am. And then the other person consistently talks to me as if I was less intelligent, less knowledgeable, less skilled, etc., than I actually am. And I then, and again, that's probably why it's escalating so quickly now, because since I have realized that people collectively assume that of me, I then try to correct them. I then try to make them realize, hey, you're assuming something wrong here. And I do this in the absolutely healthy way of communicating that what they assume is incorrect. However, this then doesn't arrive with the other person. And instead, the other person then keeps talking over me by effectively reinforcing his or her own narrative. So, example with that person whom I met up with a few days ago. So we basically talked about sort of engineering and IT stuff, and he ended up mentioning a mathematical problem, a geometric problem called the goat or the sheep's problem. So basically, you have a lawn that is circular, and at the outer diameter of that circle, a goat or a sheep is bound by a rope. And then you have to calculate what radius the rope of the sheep would have to be for that sheep to be able to assess half of the lawn. So that area that I'm sliding my finger over. How to make that half of the size of the lawn. And at first, I thought he was just asking for a circle, half of the size of the other circle. Then he corrected me, and I quickly realized, oh, okay, this is a bit more complex. However, I still immediately knew how to solve it. Partially because just prior to this, I'd spoken to him about English school system, and in my English A level, self-taught a very difficult mechanics module. That had exactly this sort of step of integrating a mathematical equation to find the area under the mathematical equation. Whilst we were out there for a walk, I also then directly said, like, oh, yes, you have to take you have to put a coordinate system around it, and then have to come up with equations for the two respective circles. And then you essentially have to take the area in between the circles. So basically, what I did was I calculated the area by first doing an integration of the upper curve over the value h, which is the y-axis point where both circles intersect, and then did h minus the other curve. However, I could have just done one curve minus the other curve, and that would have made my entire integration thing significantly easier. And whilst doing the mathematical stuff, sort of my head started to really hurt, and I kept sort of swapping things around. So for example, here, I then said that you then would have to set the area equal to the area of the smaller circle. And by the way, there's lack of concentration, and especially the fact that I sometimes swap things around in my head. So sort of words or punctuation is the very reason that I am currently unable to work on my PhD or to do any other form of intellectual work. It's literally as if I had some sort of sabotage program in there that sort of swapped things around and sort of kept putting mistakes in, whilst my thoughts are a lot clearer than what I put on paper. After I'd shown him those pages and had said, like, oh, with the algebra, sort of my head really starts hurting, and basically sort of that I'm not as good as maths as I was before. Sort of, again, the before here is 10 years ago when I calculated similarly difficult problems almost every day in university. And back then, I had the information in my head of how to do integration by substitution is something that we'd learned, and the integration by product, sort of not product differentiation, but there is an integration equivalent to it. However, I don't remember that. Sort of I don't remember what that looked like and would have to look it up. But yes, so back to the conversation with that person. I then told him that essentially from that point onwards here, I'm having trouble with the algebra because I'm simply not as fit as I used to be. And again, in addition to the fact that I haven't done this in 10 years, come immense concentration difficulties due to depression, due to having sat here at home on my own for several years, and due to being subjected to constant stress in the form of literally being robbed of my identity. And then he directly responded like, oh, but it wasn't my plan to make you feel sick. This was more a sort of thing to keep you occupied. If you want, I can show you the entire thing through a link. There are solutions in that and further Aufgaben and further exercises, so further sort of mathematical questions that are all interesting, and otherwise he wouldn't have looked at these. And then that his university degree would have had partially the identical lectures as mathematics people. So he's calling those analysis 1 and 2, linear algebra, non-linear algebra. And that in this students would see nice and interesting exercises. And again, I had not asked him to give me any exercises. I hadn't asked him to sort of give me any intellectually challenging things to do. Especially because I know that I'm currently not very fit and capable at doing these things, especially complex algebra. And I then responded that from the mathematic point of view, these questions are sort of more difficult than most things that I've calculated, and asked from what exact field those would come. Because again, to the present day, I don't know what he actually studied. He didn't say that. And then proceeded to tell him that I've also had mathematics in my degree, that we used Laplace transforms quite a lot, amongst others for frequencies and for sort of calculating disturbing signals out of a sort of radio wave signal. I also told him that occupation, in the sense of very difficult and intellectual challenging, inherently theoretical exercises, is something that I do not want. And that the one and only reason that I sat down and attempted to solve this was because I had the feeling that I had to prove something to him. And he directly responded that maybe I would have interpreted his showing me these exercises the wrong way, that these exercises should exclusively show how those exercises are not that easy to solve, how they are very theoretical and in some cases very complex. Such exercises would have been his topic for years, and that this wouldn't be a topic for one afternoon, but that especially friends of his would spend years and years on this. Or then he proceeded from years and years to saying that friends of his would have spent several days on one of these exercises, and that one of his friends even would have spent months with one of those exercises, always a little bit, then putting it aside, and never under pressure because there would be something to prove. And that I should simply, knobeln is a German word for sort of thinking about something, that I should simply think about it and sort of that I should simply think about it, sort of puzzle about it in my head, and that subsequently some of his friends would have asked for the solution because the curiosity to know the solution would have grown. And that he would have mentioned these exercises to explain his work, not to cause me headache. And then proceeded to say, like, oh, I hope that you didn't spend the entire night with those exercises. I saw that you're awake during this and this time. And I literally, for fuck's sake, I could literally solve 2 of those exercises within sort of 1 or 2 hours of sitting down. And if I still had the mathematical sort of knowledge and the mathematical routine that I had during my master's degree, then I easily would have solved those. Sort of literally a few days ago when I first looked at it, I thought it was a really difficult integration. Now that my head sort of remembers, oh wait, there was this integration by product, integration by substitution. Sort of, if I look those up, I'm pretty damn sure that within 1 or 2 hours I would solve this. However, again, I do not need to do this in order to prove to anybody that I can do it, because I know that I can do it. I then proceeded to ask if he had looked at it and at how far I have gotten. Because obviously what he was saying clearly indicated that he hadn't. He responded, yes, but I have not yet looked at what approach I would have chosen. Then went on about what he would have done during his day. He would have just cleaned the coffee machine, that it would then sarcastic that it would always be great when electronic devices say now to start a cleaning program, and some laughy smileys around that. And then essentially told me about his day of going voting, of going climbing, of being able to do stuff whilst I'm sat here at home with sort of the aftermath of probably COVID, basically sort of some throat infection that I've now had mildly for 4 to 5 weeks. Sort of I felt properly ill for sort of 2 weeks. However, as of currently, it's still at the point where I can't cycle, where I can't do proper sports, where I'm literally sort of primarily sedentary. Sort of I can walk and stuff, that's okay, but anything that I actually enjoy to do isn't possible yet. And then subsequent to that, I showed him some engineering calculations to try to explain my work to him in the sort of desperate hope that maybe then he realizes, oh, wait, this is actually an intelligent person. She's doing some calculations with very difficult things here. Maybe I should respect her and start to understand the fact that she doesn't take weeks or months for these mathematical problems as my friends do, but that she actually is smarter than that. And again, this bullshit is something that I've literally been dealing with from people for years over years over years. That they consistently talk down to me and sort of consistently assume that I'm less smart and intelligent than them, or that at the very most I'm as smart as intelligent as other people whom they know, and that no matter what I do, they are completely convinced that I essentially would be significantly less smart than I actually am. And even when I then say, hey, this is easy for me, it literally, it goes in one ear and out of the other ear. They literally do not understand the fact that I'm actually capable of doing things. People literally ignore the fact that I'm very clever and intelligent. And in addition to that, then treat me as if I was some sort of child. And it's comparable to torture. It's like literally each and every day I'm being robbed of my personality. And sort of it's not just the intelligence spectrum. Simultaneously, people assume for me to be sort of bad at dealing with emotions. Then people start to accuse me of essentially all sorts of toxic behavior that I do not do. And it's sort of always the same situation. Other people act as if I was an entirely different person. And when I then can communicate like, hey, I'm easily able to do this. This isn't difficult for me. Or when I communicate, hey, this and this that you do hurts my feelings. Sort of, please be more respectful. Please stop to do that. Then people keep assuming that I would be stupid and keep hurting my feelings in the same or even worse ways. So sort of the more I try to calmly correct people, the more people apply further violence to me. And then eventually, as I then also did in this conversation here, after yet another instance, so after I had shown him all of my university maths and had then told him that for his sort of sheep problem, essentially I probably wouldn't solve it the mathematical way, as I simply can't do that right now. At least not without taking university notes out of a box or doing a lot of Googling about integrative methods until I can actually integrate it myself. And again, sort of there are online integrational calculators. However, out of principle, I wouldn't use such a calculator and then do a solution based on such an online calculator. If it was a verified calculator, I probably would do it. But it's something that I just do not want to do. I do not want to present a solution that I haven't in person checked step for step. So yeah, I had then told him that if I wanted to know the solution, I probably wouldn't have chosen it. I wouldn't have done it the mathematical way, but instead would have taken out a spreadsheet, used the simpler equations that I already had formed without the integration, and then would vary the parameter R2 with respect to R1. Would vary the parameter R1 with respect to R2. So would essentially set one of the radii equal to 10 centimeter and then do a bunch of spreadsheet calculations for 10 centimeters, 11 centimeters, 12 centimeters, 13 centimeters of the other radius, calculate the overlapping surface, and then after having calculated the overlapping surface, I could then check to what extent it now matches half of the total surface of one circle or not, and could then say, oh, it's between so and so many centimeters. Then I could do the same for millimeters, and then I could do approximate solutions that are closer and closer and closer. And in reaction to that, he then sent me another message on the evening, went on about everything that he would have done during his day. Oh, hello, I'm just coming in. It was an interesting day. I've done this and this in my company. This and this happened, and everything is going so great. And oh, I see the sheep exercise is really relation to English, essentially, I see the sheep exercise really captivates people. There are several approaches that can be used. If you want a solution, do tell me. And sort of, yeah, for fuck's sake, I literally just showed you two different solutions, or at least verbally explained to you two different solutions. And then he proceeded to say if I would have had a nice day. And at this point, in sort of a similar level of raised voice as just now, I told him that, or I asked him if he actually is stupid, that this stupid sheep exercise doesn't captivate me, that what captivates me is how his utterly perverted devoidness of respect towards me. And then again, as response, so again, I sent him 3 angry voicemail messages. We can actually run those through, however they are in German. I will translate them.
Wörtlich aus, wie ich dir jetzt schon zweimal gesagt habe.
Or to put it in words, in spoken words, as I by now have told you twice.
Ist der einzige Grund, dass ich mich überhaupt hinsetze und diese Scheiße ausrechne.
As I have now told you twice, the only reason that I actually sit down and calculate this shit is that you do not or did not believe me that I am capable of calculating this.
Dass du mir nicht geglaubt hast, dass ich diese Aufgabe ohne weiteres kann. Und bis einschließlich jetzt redest du auf mich herab, von wegen du wolltest mir Lösungen zeigen oder.
And until the present moment, you're talking down to me, talking about how you could or would want to show me solutions for this exercise, and consistently assume that I would be captivated by that exercise because I would not be able to do it.
Oder sonst was. Das ist sowas von widerlich. Und ganz und gar ehrlich, mit wem wie dir möchte ich nichts zu tun haben.
That is utterly disgusting, and in all honesty, with somebody such as you, I want to have absolutely nothing to do.
Entweder kannst du mit mir respektvoll umgehen und mal anerkennen, dass ich auch einen Masterabschluss habe und auch eine Top-Wissenschaftlerin bin.
So either you can treat me with respect and acknowledge the fact that I also have a master's degree and that I am also a top scientist, or we can leave it be.
Oder wir können es gerne bleiben lassen.
In the sense of, or
Also
we
entweder
don't have
kannst
to
du mit mir
communicate at
respektvoll
all. So no, third voice message.
Ja, ehrlich, einen 47-jährigen Heini, der hier einen auf so mentormäßig macht, brauche ich garantiert nicht. Vor allem nicht, wenn er noch nicht mal von einem kurzen Blick auf meine eine Seite damit den Notizen erkennen kann, dass ich dieses Problem von der Grundwurzel her locker gelöst habe. Weil dass du das nicht sofort erkennst, spricht jetzt nicht unbedingt für deine intellektuellen Fähigkeiten.
That I definitely do not need a 47-year-old guy who comes along and acts as if he was my mentor or needed to teach me something and if I was stupid. And that further, the fact that he, from looking at my clearly written out equations for that, couldn't directly tell that I was on the right track, certainly shows that he's not exactly smart himself. Then I reposted the 2 pages that I'd sent him and once again said, here you then set the area equal to, this time correct, pi r2 squared, and then all you have to do is to do the algebraic mathematics, which I simply am not in the mood to do, which I simply do not want to do, or in German, worauf ich einfach keinen Bock habe. Which, now thinking about the fact that it's a sheep problem, so we basically call male goats Ziegenbock, and verbally and literally, so ich habe keinen Bock auf was is a German saying for like, oh, I really do not feel like doing something, I do not want to do it. But it literally, if you take it literally, it says, on this, I simply do not have a male goat. And again, sort of, he then exclusively or I'm gonna say out what he then responded. Wow, this is a reaction. We better leave that with the contact. I wish you all good for the future. I responded, a rightful reaction, in response to your perverted gaslighting. You are outright disgusting. And again, he then responded that there would be difficult approaches to that mathematical problem, that he would have wanted to show me his solution that is based on a different approach. And that he wouldn't have to beleidigen, he wouldn't have to let himself be offended, let himself be objected to swear words. And that a conversation should include respect and acknowledgement. My response, exactly. And you have neither acknowledgement nor respect towards me. If swear words or sort of verbal offending is the one and only thing that sort of wakes you up, then I sadly do have to offend you. Then I sadly do have to subject you to swear words. Definitely ist nicht meine Art, is not how I usually am. However, in all honesty, to grab oneself, a top engineer with additional mathematical knowledge, to show her a problem and to then talk down to her as if she was too stupid to solve that problem, or as if she would be completely breaking her head over this problem, and as if she would be completely captivated by that problem, that is worse disgusting and worse offensive than any sort of verbal swear word possibly could be. Even worse so, due to the fact that I previously had told you that exactly that has been done to me in various career settings. That exactly that is something that I have been subjected to various career settings, in various career settings. Also, dass mir das in mehreren Karriere-Settings wiederholt angetan wurde. And that also is the reason that I am unable to work. Because the fact that people do not perceive me for how intelligent and how smart and how capable I actually am frustrates me so severely that I literally cannot and do not want to work. And again, talking down to you, gaslighting, too stupid. How do you come to those thoughts? There often are many solutions to such exercise questions. I have only just not been able to comprehend and understand your solutions because I was, weil unterwegs gewesen wäre, because I was sort of traveling or moving about, and that he would have wanted to show me his solutions as comparison, nothing else. And again, here, his words are no longer adhering with everything that he had previously said. Because again, I had explained him and also had literally responded to his earlier answers to sort of drag them back down in the WhatsApp conversation and to show him, here, look at this. This is where you're saying this. And also again, that he would have talked about solutions that he could show me and that there would be multiple solutions, whilst I literally already had given him two separate solutions, or at least the sort of verbal way to get to two separate solutions. Again, I simply am not in the mood to actually sit down and calculate this out, because I know that I would arrive at a correct solution very soon. And again, he then responded that he would have liked to look at my solution in calm and peace, but that he wouldn't have had time yet. So in Ruhe is what he used. That wait. Ich hätte mir deine Lösung gerne in Ruhe angeschaut, nur noch keine Zeit gehabt. So, I would have liked to look at your solution sort of in quiet, in peace, basically, whilst on my own. However, I have not yet had the time. I do want to finally end the contact. Want to finally end the contact. Intention would not have been to hurt me or to provoke me, but instead to understand me and to support me. And again, here he exclusively talks about his intentions and still ignores what he actually said and did. Because what he said and did was absolutely horrid gaslighting. At the very least towards me, as a person who's equally or more intelligent than him. Probably not for a person who would actually struggle with these problems, but because I do not struggle with these problems, because I am not less intelligent than I actually am. Towards me, this is outright cruel gaslighting. And then that he wouldn't need that he would now block me, and that despite all of my swear words and offenses, he would wish me all the best for the future. And the thing is, this is literally how every single man has been to me. And every single person actually has been to me. In years, over years, over years. First of all, talking to me as if I was stupid. And then interpreting every single sign of anger as sort of being dramatic or problematic behavior on my part. And at least here, he then doesn't go on and accuse me of having issues, of being dramatic, of being aggressive or whatever. But instead says that he would wish me all good for the future. Previously, people, as especially a Harald Peter Futschig, then started to accuse me of being a mean or vindictive person. And the theme always is the same thing. That people are psychotic with regard to me, talk to me as if I was less intelligent than I am, talk to me as if I wouldn't understand things, when actually it's the other way around. When the other person does not understand things. And then when I react angrily, they then use that reactive anger that I'm displaying as sort of proof or evidence that I would be problematic. And essentially they don't stop from the very beginning, act as if I was stupid, and then display every sign of anger for me, as they keep talking down to me as if I was stupid and useless, as proof that I would have issues. Like, literally, I cannot describe how much this hurts. I cannot describe how utterly cruel and sadistic that is. So I literally spent the entirety of the last night curled up and crying and literally feeling as if my heart was being ripped into pieces. And this shit is what I've been trapped in for over a decade. This is how every single person has been to me in over a decade. And the worst thing is, this is also how people mostly had been towards me in my youth and teenage years. Because even then, sort of, people gave me exercises and were like, oh, this kid here is more smart, more clever than other kids in class. But at home, sort of, parents and people, there was never the thought like, oh, maybe our very intelligent child here is useful. No. There was never the thought of, oh, we could sort of ask our very intelligent child for her opinion on some of our matters and decisions. but always just hear child is a thing to be occupied, child is a thing that isn't as smart as me or us, and child essentially is a lesser entity. And that entire sort of toxic theme literally stuck with me doing school, doing university, throughout my entire life until now. It's like also doing school. I was literally the one and only student who scored 5 A's at A levels. And that school had a sort of Oxford group for people who should apply to Oxford and Cambridge. That out of 80 A level students, around 10 people were in. However, neither me nor the other mathematical genius person who used to be who was a Chinese student from abroad. And similarly, every week there were prizes for sort of the best student or best improving students in each and every subject. And I literally never received a single one of these prizes. Partially because these prizes were based on performance with regard to a predicted grade, and my predicted grades were all A's, aside from economics, and it's sort of difficult to do better than an A. But also because I somehow seem to be inherently invisible for sort of acknowledgement and compliments, and especially for acknowledging in the form that, because again, I don't even need people to compliment me and to sort of sweep in and talk to me as if I was incredibly intelligent. However, what I do want and what I do need is that people do not grossly underestimate me, that people do not ignore how intelligent I am. And especially when people give me a piece of work to do, they then do not talk down to me as if I had done it less well than I actually had, or as if I wasn't able to do it when I actually had been able to do it. And in addition to all that, I needed for this stupid sabotage program to disappear out of my head. That sort of stupid sabotage program that then sort of puts small mistakes in, or sort of when doing algebra swaps around plus minus signs and stuff, and essentially thereby makes me look less smart than I am. And sort of that's only the intellectual side. In addition to all that, people that consistently ignore in addition to that, people that consistently ignore that I am relatively good at communication, that I communicate clearly. And again, also in this conversation here, later on, this guy said that he would have wanted to look at my solution approach in quiet. However, before that, he said that he would have looked at it, and he didn't communicate in any way that he hadn't looked at it properly. But instead communicated, here, I've looked at it, followed by accusations that I would be captivated by the problem or struggling with it. And again, subsequently to this, I had then said that the only reason that I had actually sat down and written it out that far was to prove to him that I can do it, because evidently he somehow didn't believe that I could do it. And sort of, that again is another sort of pattern with especially men, that I do the constant communication and that they do not communicate.
and sort of independent of what I do, independent of how clearly I communicate. They consistently keep perceiving me as less smart, less sort of capable in communication than I am, and in addition to that, are inherently psychopathic towards me in the sense that they essentially completely ignore the fact that I'm a feeling being. That I have emotions and feelings, and that these feelings are deeply hurt that when they talk down to me and disrespect me. And then even when I explain to them in the smallest detail how they disrespect me, they still completely ignore that. Sort of, it's literally as if I, as the person who I actually am, did not exist to people. And the thing is, this isn't a problem that I'm creating in my head. This is a problem that is in the heads of other people around me who collectively perceive me for significantly less of good aspects than I actually am, who collectively are completely devoid of any form of empathy or sympathy towards me, or worse, even are sadistically inclined. And to that, when I eventually react in anger and shout at them, or when I then eventually even get those sort of self-hitting and self-punching fits that I formed 2 or 3 years ago, due to that consistent pressure and gaslighting that I've literally been trapped in from all sides for years over years over years. That I then use every sign of severe distress as further sort of evidence, or interpret it as further evidence that I would be problematic. Oh, and then in addition to all of that, they literally ignore every violence, every injustice, and every cruelty that I've been subjected to. Best example, ankle injury. Literally, not a single person or supposed friend has ever sort of expressed severe sympathy or condolences. Not a single person has ever sort of actually verbally expressed, well, this must be really difficult for you. Nor has anybody ever attempted to constructively help me in the sense of, oh, if this isn't healing, sort of, why is that not healing? Have you gotten a second opinion? What exactly is the issue in that? Because again, that is how I would have been towards myself. And so, like, even if that impingement had not already been discovered 2016, if I had been surrounded by at least one or two people such as myself, this never would have happened. And I know wouldn't be suffering from arthrosis. My entire life wouldn't be ruined. However, instead, my sick bullshit parents literally intentionally kept my ankle crippled. And literally actively crippled it to the point where I'm now suffering from arthrosis, where I can't run, where I can't properly skate, where I can't do anything. And even that is something that not a single person has ever sort of acknowledged or sort of expressed sympathy in the form of, wow, that is absolutely fucked up. But instead, in over a decade, every single person whom I've been in contact with has added to the violence that I've been subjected to.
And what he's saying there does not adhere with what he's asserting he would have said or he would have wanted here. Then in capitals, then scroll up. Literally scroll up, then scroll up and read. Then here posting in what he had said again.
And worst of all, not a single person has ever acknowledged that they have been inherently cruel or horrible towards me. No person has ever acknowledged, oh, I significantly messed up. Some people say like, oh, it wasn't my intention to do that and that. But if it wasn't their intention, they still did it, then to come clear about that, they also have to say like, hey, I did not intend to do this. However, I do acknowledge that I did it. I do acknowledge that I adversely affected you. And I apologize for it. And I sort of want to be different in the future.